Now we get to the next section called The Day of the Killing of Halyna Hutchins. Paragraph 67. On October 21st, 2021, the day started off slow because of the camera crew's protest of the safety conditions. The departing camera crew collected their personal equipment and production continued with an improvised alternative shooting plan using the remaining skeleton crew of the camera department. After lunch, the production went to the Bonanza Creek Church to line up the cameras for a scene showing defendant Baldwin cross-drawing his revolver. Interesting that they used the term skeleton crew. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it does seem very foreshadowing and eerie of like what's about to happen, which everybody knows what's about to happen because we all know the facts of this case. Defendant Armorer Gutierrez Reed, who was responsible for maintaining the revolver and the ammunition while on set, had left the revolver and ammunition out of the safe she maintained for securing firearms on the set. Defendant Gutierrez Reed did not verify the revolver or ammunition were safe before the first assistant director, Defendant Halls, took the revolver to Defendant Baldwin. So now, before I continue on here, based on what we know from Hannah's civil lawsuit that she filed, she's probably going to say, well, that was outside of my control because somebody stepped in and took it and I didn't know. You know, I only found out late that they were even doing this. I found out that the revolver was already there, this and that. But at the end of the day, she still bears responsibility to maintain control over these firearms, regardless of what other personalities are on set. And that's just the liability standard. I mean, that's her job, right? If that's literally your job is to maintain control and safety over these items, it doesn't matter what anybody else does to step in to take your role from you. Like, you have to either fight to maintain that control yourself or submit your resignation and leave. That's pretty much the only alternatives for someone in her position. And it sucks if that's the case, if that's actually how things were playing out, if she really was trying to do her best in this job, but that they were that people were stepping over her role, and people were spreading her thin by making her perform other duties as well. Those are the alternatives, because she should understand that the job that she's taking is a very dangerous job. And if anybody is hurt on set, that's her head too. So, okay. Continuing on, Defendant Halls never verified the revolver was safe before handing it to Defendant Baldwin. So, the first part of this paragraph was all about pointing fingers at Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Now, Defendant Halls, he also is responsible. He's responsible for, even though it's not his role technically, but by stepping into that role, essentially, he is responsible for taking a revolver and not verifying it was safe before handing it to Alec Baldwin. Defendant Baldwin accepted the gun from Defendant Halls rather than the production's armorer. Defendant Baldwin never verified the gun was safe before operating the gun, nor did he require the armorer or Defendant Halls to demonstrate in his presence that the gun was safe. So this, and I don't know if they're going to say this later on, but it seems to suggest, without saying, I wish it would explicitly state it to make it more clear, but it seems to suggest that Defendant Baldwin should not have accepted the gun from Defendant Halls. He should have only accepted the gun from the armorer. They haven't stated this, like I said. This is, me talking about what would be the ideal, what I would like to see, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is a terrible complaint. So far, this is a pretty good complaint. Defendant Baldwin never verified the gun was safe before operating the gun, nor did he require the armorer or Defendant Halls to demonstrate in his presence that the gun was safe. Now, is that something that he should have known? Probably. It hasn't alleged that so far, based on his experience, based on, what he should be, what any actor in that position should know. But at the same time, this is what it's suggesting. So I just, as kind of an aside, I wish that was a little bit more explicit. Okay. Moving on. At the lineup in the church, defendant Baldwin sat in a church pew approximately 4 feet away from Miss Hutchins and the other crew members there. Defendant Baldwin used his right hand to unholster the revolver, pointed the gun at Miss Hutchins and the other crew who were just 4 feet away, and released the hammer of the revolver, causing it to discharge. Because there was live ammunition in the gun, a .45 caliber bullet was discharged and struck Miss Hutchins, ricocheted through her body, and then hit Joel Souza, the director of the film, in the shoulder. The bullet was discharged with sufficient force to pass entirely through Miss Hutchins' body and through Joel Souza's shoulder, ending its path embedded in Joel Souza's back, less than 2 inches from his spine. Oh, good Lord. He could have been paralyzed for life with that. So, okay. Miss Hutchins said, "I'm hit." Mr. Souza yelled, "Ow." And obviously, I think it probably was a bit more audible than how I'm reading it. The Steadicam operator, and that, by the way, is one reason why, generally speaking, when we're talking about transcripts from trial and whatnot, a lot can be lost by reading a deposition transcript or a trial transcript, as opposed to seeing actual video footage. Because you can read it as "I'm hit" and "ow," when in fact, if you saw it in person, it was probably much more audible and much more traumatic than that. Anyhow, just that little bit of an aside. The Steadicam operator and the gaffer moved quickly to help Miss Hutchins. Defendant Baldwin did not offer help to any of the victims. Now, okay, so that's an interesting point that they added in here, because it's not necessary for someone in his position to offer help. It doesn't make any fact of his negligence, recklessness, willfulness in this case, it doesn't make any of his liability more or less likely, but it does seem like that was intended primarily to say, yeah, he was an asshole. He was an asshole in this scene. He didn't even help. You know, I mean, it doesn't say what he did, but it does say that he didn't offer help. So it's an interesting sentence that they added in here. Because like I said, it doesn't do anything for the liability, but I think it does for the court of public opinion. Okay. Anyhow, that's just a little bit of an aside. Medics responded to the scene. Miss Hutchins was taken to the hospital, where she died as a result of the grievous wounds inflicted by the bullet. Miss Hutchins' husband and young son have been devastated by her death. Okay. So that's the factual allegations, and then there's count 1 and count 2, and we'll go through those. But so far, so the for the negligence claim, for the wrongful death claim, you know, whether or not they are whether or not we're talking about negligence, recklessness, or intentional willful behavior, I think that there's probably a lot here that some people can be found probably acting in reckless disregard for the safety of crew members, and particularly Halyna Hutchins, since she was the one who was injured here, and she's the subject of this lawsuit. So that first count, you know, there's a lot of allegation there. We really, so far, for loss of consortium, all we really have is Miss Hutchins' husband and young son have been devastated by her death. So my guess is that we're probably going to get a little bit more color when we go to count 2 talking about that, because there are certain elements that are going to need to be alleged here. I mean, so far, so okay, we do know. So if we were to go to loss of consortium, and I apologize again, I don't know why this formatting is so weird. On my normal PowerPoint here that I have set up, it's normal. I don't know why the formatting is just weird. Okay. Anyway, sorry about that, guys. So for loss of consortium, I mean, close familial relationship, we know that we're talking about the husband and the son. So element 1, yeah, that's met. Tortious injury to the injured, yes, of course, we have that so far. Loss of consortium suffered by non-injured spouse, child, parent. Maybe all we have is just that they've been devastated by her death. Maybe there might be enough so far, but you know, whether it was proximately caused, yes, of course, she would be here with a loving relationship with both of them, if not for the behavior of these other defendants individually, and you know, together as a group. Um, so yeah, so I would say that we have all of these individual things. So 1, 2, and 4. Now, as far as, uh, the first 4 elements for negligence, I think yes. Duty of reasonable care, we went through that whole list A through I of like all of the things that you're not supposed to do or that you're supposed to do when you're talking about handling a firearm or being around a firearm. Then they breached that duty because they alleged that they breached those duties. They they didn't do any of those things that were supposed to be done, and those could be directed at different defendants depending on which duty that we're talking about that was listed there. Plaintiff was harmed, obviously, death. 4, defendant's breach caused plaintiff's harm. Yes, we have that because they've alleged that she would be living with her husband and her son right now and giving them hugs and whatnot and all kinds of love. Those are met. So the one thing that is maybe kind of missing that kind of needs to be bolstered at this point in the complaint is element 3 of loss of consortium. This loss of consortium suffered by non-injured spouse, child, parent, and what we need for that is basically for them to talk about the relationship that she had with them. If we need that, I don't know. Even now, the I don't know. There might be enough that could be inferred based on the type of relationship here, maybe. But I would much prefer to see some kind of allegation about the relationship that she had with them, to show that there was a loss of intimacy, a loss of uh loving memories, like that kind of thing.